Just a reminder before we start, there's no food or drink allowed in the courtroom. No use of your cell phones or any electronic recording devices. If any are seen, the deputies are told to take them. After the hearing is concluded, just please wait in your seats until you're dismissed by the deputy. All rise.
Invited to speak or is going to speak. They'll be allowed to take their mask off also, okay? So I'll call State of Wisconsin versus Martice Fuller.
Your Honor, State appears by Mike Gravely and Angelina Gabrielle of the Kenosha District Attorney's Office.
Martice Fuller appears in person with Carl Johnson and Jillian Scheidegger.
This matter comes on for sentencing. I have reviewed all of the letters that were submitted by family and friends of the victims and of the defendant. I've reviewed the sentencing memorandum and the pre-sentence that was filed by the Department of Corrections. As to those items, Mr. Johnson or Ms. Scheidegger, are there any factual errors in the pre-sentence?
No additions or corrections.
Mr. Gravely.
Same for the State. We're ready to proceed.
Okay, go ahead.
State would ask that Stephanie Juga have an opportunity to speak to the court first.
Ms. Juga, come on up. Take all the time you need.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. 2 years ago today was the last time that I saw my daughter, Kaylee. Today, 2 years ago, the day her father and I had to lay Kaylee down for her final resting place. She was only 15 years old, with so many dreams and goals that she had. She was such a kind-hearted person. She could light up a room and could always bring a smile to anyone's face. Martice Fuller ruined it all. He ruined all Kaylee's dreams and goals that she had. Martice Fuller killed my daughter on May 9, 2019, in her own home, and then attempted to kill me with no second thoughts or regrets. During the trial, he sat in the courtroom with no remorse for our family or our daughter, Kaylee. Not only did he kill Kaylee and try to kill me, he took so much more away from us. My daughter's gone. That means no more's with her. We don't get to see her graduate high school this year. We don't get to see her go to college. We don't get to see her get married or adopt children like she wanted to. Kaylee will never get a chance to meet her new nephew. She would have been so excited to meet him and the best auntie ever. We just simply have no mores with her. Our life is forever changed. Our house is so different and so empty. Our home is where we are supposed to feel the safest, and Martice Fuller ruined that and took that safe place away from Kaylee and myself. Martice Fuller didn't only take our daughter's life away, but he ruined me. I am not the same person anymore, and I never will be. My best friend is gone forever. We did everything together, whether we were shopping, going to the gym, going to Starbucks, watching Netflix, jamming in the car to music, or just dancing like crazy in the kitchen. She was always by my side, and she was my biggest cheerleader. Now I'm lost. I just feel so lost without her. I don't like to go anywhere or socialize with people. I just feel lost. Not only emotionally am I changed, but I also am physically. I deal with daily pain in my wrist where Martice Fuller shot me. I am limited to what I can do. I can't open certain things, lift heavy objects like I used to. I can only hold my grandson for a very short period of time. I also had to stop working so much because of the pain in my wrist and the numbness that I have on the top of my hand that goes down my 2 fingers. I also have pain in my chest where the other bullet traveled through my body. And the doctors say that this pain may never go away due to nerve damage. So not only am I living with a broken heart from losing Kaylee, I also have a daily reminder of the pain that I have to go through of what Martice Fuller did to Kaylee and myself on that day. I have nightmares all the time and flashbacks that take my breath away and make me have panic attacks. This not only affects me daily, but it also affects my husband and my 2 sons. My husband has to replay the call that I called him that day, screaming to him that he was to come home right away because Kaylee and I had been shot. He couldn't really understand what I was saying, so he had to look up on the police scanner to see what actually happened. Having to rush to the hospital to hear that Kaylee didn't make it. Seeing me in the hospital bed waiting to have my first surgery. My husband having to tell me that Kaylee, our daughter, didn't make it. I know this is what he thinks about all the time, and it weighs very heavy on his heart. My oldest son, Tyler, calling me in a panic, asking me where I was, then watching his mom covered in blood being put into the back of an ambulance. My youngest son, Mason, getting picked up from school by a police officer, not knowing what's going on, and the police officer can't tell him. Getting brought to the ER, seeing his dad and his brothers just stand there. He asked what's going on. Hearing that his mom and his sister were both shot by Martice Fuller. Then the doctor walks in to tell them that Kaylee didn't make it. My husband and 2 sons had to hear the worst news ever, and now they struggle with the pain of losing their daughter and their sister forever. My sons don't get to make any more memories with their sister. The struggle we have is real. We all struggle daily from the loss of Kaylee. I feel that Martice Fuller should get life with no parole, as I feel that he will not change, and he may do the same to another person. If you can enter someone's home and walk to their room with a gun and shoot them several times, and then turn to their mom and try to kill her as well, and then also deny everything and put the family through 2 years of going through pain, makes us go through 1 week of the trial, reliving that day all week long, was absolute torture for us. Having to see all those photos on that day, and then having to see our daughter's autopsy pictures. All while Martice Fuller sits there with no remorse for Kaylee, myself, or my family. Then you regret nothing, and I feel that he would do it again. If he was able to get out, I would be scared. He would want to come find me, and I feel that he would try to finish the job. Please, Judge, feel my pain.
Thank you, Mrs. Juga. I appreciate you speaking. Does
Thank you.
anyone else in your family want to say anything at this time? Not right now? Okay. Okay. Mr. Gravely.
Your Honor, the recommendation of the state could not be made more strongly. The court watched the entire trial. The court saw the emotions and passions of how this case was approached by everyone from law enforcement to the prosecution to the family and community supporters of the victims. We are collectively asking you as the sentencing judge today to impose a sentence where this defendant, Martice Fuller, never again is released from custody. So we are asking on the homicide to Kaylee that you impose life and that the defendant have no possibility of extended supervision. We're asking that counts 2 and 3, the attempted murder of Stephanie and the armed burglary, the entry into this home, which should be their sanctuary, should have consecutive sentences as the court feels is appropriate. But in all situations, we ask the court structure a sentence where the Juga family will never again have to fear that this defendant will be released during their or their children's lifetimes. And I do that understanding the magnitude of asking this court to impose that sentence on an individual who has recently turned 18. But I on behalf of the state, cannot more strongly express to the court that there are some losses that are so enormous, there are some crimes so terrifying to the community, there are some moments in a courtroom when danger is so clear that age cannot be the primary factor, that those other elements that I have mentioned must be at the forefront of a court when they impose a sentence. And I want to first talk about the enormous loss here, and I am conscious I do little justice to it based on the letters, the heartbreakingly eloquent letters the court has from Nick Juga and other family members and supporters, as well as the loss so well expressed by Stephanie today. But I want to remind the court of the moments in our trial where those who care for Kaylee Juga talked about her as outgoing and brave and gentle and smart. You heard her qualities. You know that her whole future was stolen, was taken in a moment of controlling rage. The kind of controlling rage this court has seen hundreds of times. And so the court can quantify it. The court can organize how dangerous the controlling rage in this domestic violence case is. It can decide, is this at the highest levels of the danger of those kind of aspects of character that the court saw expressed by this conduct. Kaylee died at 15, and so much, as expressed very eloquently, will be missed. And, one of the true tragedies of this case, of course, is that Kaylee thought she could heal whatever rage was in this man. She believed she could fix him. She wanted to save him. And so there is that double tragedy, and it is a quality that you don't need to know this family for long to know that is throughout the Juga family. That they are about healing and saving and protecting people, including those who are damaged. And so, Kaylee taking that brilliant characteristic, that characteristic that we all want for the most promising young people in this community. And it was her death. In this tragedy, it was her death. What you know about her in death is that Kaylee can be finally summarized as the kind of young woman that everybody who wrote you wants to claim credit for. They all want to claim credit for the fabulous things she was. And it cannot do anything but break your heart to hear Stephanie Juga speak today, as it did on the witness stand, because she is still devastated in the ways she talked about with the physical injuries that have basically ended her ability to do her profession. And then how heartbreaking is it to know there's a new life in this family? An opportunity that brand new life could be a place she could heal. That moments of the love of a grandmother could be a place where she could find some healing point. And her physical limitations even limit her ability to bond there. The pre-sentence says she can't hold that child for an extended period of time. So even there's a reminder in that moment that might be a brilliant new beginning for her. She has to be reminded. And this letter that the court hears about briefly in this case that is received by her from the jail, where an inmate knows intimate details about their life. An inmate writes a letter, and it is not per se a threatening letter, but it is a letter that knows their cars and the inside of their house and her profession and their home. And it's a person that no one in their family knows. And upon police investigation, what is revealed is that it is a person who shares a cell. This is post-arrest. This is a individual arrested for murder and held in custody who shares those details, and that individual indicates he was urged by the defendant to write this letter, which cannot come out of thin air. Further terrorizing the woman you couldn't kill. What defect of humanity and character allows you that decision-making from a jail cell? It is the absolute necessary demand in everything about his being to be in complete and utter control, devastating anyone along the way, risking everything again and again. Any rational person would say, I better be on my best conduct. I'm facing a murder charge. And he's causing devastatingly personal letters to come from the jail because he needs the upper hand. He needs the controlling thing at all costs. The letters describe the same Stephanie you see, a person who has parts of her that feel dead inside. You know, the biology of the world says, you know, your child should never die first. And that's because parts of you died then. And she feels guilt to feel any joy. You know what? Where do you go next? And I want to suggest something simple to this court. There is no ability for Stephanie Juga to heal until this defendant is in prison forever. That is the only place where she is going to be able to find any place to start a recovery. And I believe that is a reason that the court should consider today. I have to tell the court I cried openly when I read Nick Juga's letter. I did that because this is a man who has spent his entire professional life protecting this country and protecting all of us as individuals. He has put himself in harm's way in remote and secret and ugly places again and again for us. And now he's a man, his whole life has been protecting people. How will he ever be able to recover from the people he loves most dying and being under that threat in his own home? This is what he is about. This is who he is as a human being. So you couldn't harm or corrupt everything he has stood for more profoundly. You couldn't poison the well of his life more profoundly than to go to his home, a man who has protected Martice Fuller and his family by putting his life on the line again and again. The Juga home, Your Honor, is a tomb. Their home is a graveyard of memories. Many times a day they have to pass a room untouched for 2 years because they want, in every bit of their being, to have a day or a way that the occupant will come back to them in some way or form. And so they cannot process or be a part of that everyday door that is a reminder for them. I need to tell the court a story about the Jugas, which I think must be told to this court so that you know who the Jugas are in terms of character of people in this community, because this goes to their loss. Miss Gabrielle and Miss Beasy and I went to their home. This was a couple weeks after this homicide. So these are folks whose grief is as raw as it could be. We went to their home to begin the long process of preparing this case. And I can speak for myself, I think I can speak for my colleagues. When we entered their home, the scene of all this tragedy, we were overcome. we couldn't function. It was that devastating. Do you know who comforted us? The Juga family comforted us. We're bystanders, being comforted by the people who have suffered. That's the strength of character of the people you have suffering in your courtroom today. That's what they're capable of. I don't know if it's the military family background or the tradition of service or the just needing to make everybody as healed, who's broken as possible, but I mean, it is almost unexpressible, the character of someone who can make that happen. Now, I've talked about this crime on its level to this family, and that is something that should never be not at the forefront here. But I think it's important to talk about the devastation that this crime had on this community as well. Because it's not every day that we're in here talking about a crime that literally terrified the entire community. I want to bring us back to that day. This is one of those rare crimes where the knowledge of it passes mouth to mouth, where people are being called desperately at their workplaces or at their homes, where the texts get there quicker than the media does, where everybody hears gunman is on the loose and here's the neighborhood, and they're immediately calculating, am I or the people I love in danger right now? The schools in Kenosha locked down. They would not let their children out because they have that duty to protect in those moments. Everyone called and texted their children and told them, as I did, and told them, do not leave the house, lock the doors. That's what we all did because of this crime. That's the category of crime the court has before it today. At their own home, in the middle of a weekday afternoon, when they are doing everything right, she picks up her child from school. They're getting ready to go camping. It is a everyday Kenosha day. And this devastation occurs. And why it is so terrifying to the community is there's no strategy to keep yourself safe. You cannot keep your teenager from falling in love. You can't keep your teenager from trying to heal people. You can't not invite people into your home. There's no way to keep safe from someone who is willing to be a predator in this regard. And that's what is so terrifying and devastating to this community. And so the nature of this case could not be more serious. And I want to talk for a minute about the injuries too, because I think they go directly to this defendant's character. Kaylee is shot 5 times. 4 of them are to the chest. 1 is to the head, and he even mentions to a family member that her face is blackened after he shoots her. And what that is, Judge, is stippling. And stippling means you have shot someone at close quarters, in the face. Not in the back of the head, Judge, in the face. He could look her in her dying eyes and had to be close enough to her to blacken her skin in that moment with the soot of the gunpowder. That's the character of this man before you today. He's capable of that. He's capable of that moment. And I think the defining moment of this case, and let me say first, Stephanie Juga is alive today for pure, unadulterated, beautiful fortune. If she had seen him first, she easily could be dead. If she had come a second sooner, she could easily be dead. If she had made it 3 or 4 more steps further from that door she could close, she could be dead. If there were not 2 doors she could close and the last one lock, she could be dead. All of those things are just the sweet, random fortune that has her alive today. Because this defendant was clearly ready, willing, prepared to shoot her multiple times and did so in areas that could easily have caused her death. And I think a defining moment in this case is when Stephanie tells us she faces him and she says, "You don't have to do this." And he very clearly tells us what he's about. "Yes, I have to." And I think that defines this case. It shows that the domestic violence that is throughout this case has the hold that is willing to cause a death. willing to cause multiple deaths if necessary. He has to be in control, Judge. Kaylee can't fix him. She can't help him. Having a situation where he's in a crowded hallway doesn't stop him. Teachers don't stop him from needing to be in control. Police officers assigned to the schools cannot stop him. Contracts with the school saying you will lose all the things you care about at school and sports cannot stop him. His own parents warning him, trying to tell him, you cannot be, you've got to let this girl go, you've got to do something else, cannot stop him. And then Kaylee's parents cannot stop him. Nothing there can stop him. Remember the moment in this case where the dean of students of the high school he attends tells you, Your Honor, she was frightened. Frightened. This is a person who does discipline all day as her job of students, of high school students. She is frightened by the anger and lies he directed at her regarding Kaylee. Now, the defense has indicated in their documents, and I think they're going to say in their argument, you know, you got to give a release date because he needs hope. You know, the way he's going to improve, the way he's going to become a different person is by giving him some hope today, Judge. And I would suggest to you that strategy has been tried and has failed, and we know that because of the death of this young girl. And so everybody tried that. Everybody said, we'll give you hope. Just correct your behavior. We'll sign a contract with you. We'll just warn you. You know, there's a lot to lose. Get better. Do better. And none of it ever worked. And so it would be naive and dangerous to go with that strategy again. And if you needed any more convincing, facing a trial, look at his jail conduct. With multiple incidences of violence, with uncontrollable behavior, knowing he would face a sentencing court. We know that before the trial even, with hope out there for him, that doesn't control his behavior in any way. And then I want to talk about the jury tampering. I don't know, I mean, I've been at this a long time, so have you, Your Honor, on the bench. I've never seen a more profound attempt to manipulate people to try to tamper with a jury in my long career. And it is, again, a show that this strategy of offering him hope will not keep us safe. Because then, when he should have had those moments of hope, he's about trying to corrupt the system profoundly. And that, again, is a crime against the Jugas. Because it delays this case, it doesn't let them heal for even longer, and it tries to make it so they will never get an opportunity for the facts to be decided and responsibility to be given. So, I suggest to the court, if you think about how planned out this incident is, I know, Judge, I'm talking in some detail, but I just want to be clear how much we are in a situation where this is a premeditated crime. He plans out this incident days in advance, maybe months in advance. He carries out a reconnaissance mission a few days earlier, using the same bike, going to the same location. He refers to it in texts that we show to the jury as a hit. And that's exactly how he plans and conducts this case, as almost a professional hit. He has an original staging point at the Star Gels house where he takes a bike and stashes it days earlier. He rides to his second staging place, which is a wooded area just a couple of blocks from the Jugas. So he has reconnaissanced 2 places where he will be able to be anonymous. He rides in both directions to both of those 2 staging points. He obtains a gun from one source and ammunition from another, so that you only have to tell a certain amount of information to those you're manipulating. He does change his clothes. He spends days trying to recruit a helper who is essentially, he's telling her, be my assassin. I mean, that's what he's doing. Do this hit for me. And she refuses, but that is going on for multiple days, including the day of this murder. The schedule is no accident. He has a narrow band of time when he knows none of the Juga men will be home. He knows that that Kaylee will have gotten home from school and he knows exactly who will be home. There's no surprise or accident, Judge, that this happens at exactly the time it happens. And if you look at how he maneuvers around and sachets up against an area that would be a risk to avoid cameras, you know that he has thought about this in ways most of us would never even have considered. He has thought it through in all those ways. He asked someone new to get rid of the weapon from him, someone uninvolved in the rest of it. He has a false alibi that he presents to the cops. And gee, is it an accident that his mom separately provides exactly the same false alibi? I don't think so. I don't think those things happen in a vacuum. And his mom then, when she is pressed and confronted with some of the details, admits, I'm lying about this. That alibi is a false alibi. But they tried to do that before, and that had to have been considered either before this incident or at least right after this incident before he moves to Racine. And then the family assists him in getting out of town. So who does he manipulate? And again, I ask the court to think about the profound criminal thinking involved here. The Stargell family, Desiree, Dontrell, the Bowens family, his own mother and father, Martin, his close friend, Ann Shanice, and Lexi. All of these people individually have been manipulated by giving them selective information so that they have a part in this heinous set of crimes and his escape. Also, he can be in complete control. He's one of those rare individuals willing to kill to maintain control. So I want to talk a little bit about some of his family and supporters, a little bit in the pre-sentence and out on the internet, and what I want to describe to the court is really an alternative false reality. Okay, so there are members of the family or supporters who have indicated, well, this is a bunch of misunderstanding and some lies have been told about this innocent guy, and he's not capable of this, and all those kind of things. And I need the court to understand that some of that information, at least in the pre-sentence, is provided by his mother, who I don't expect to give up her love for him just because of conduct here. I understand that is going to happen. But her information must be interpreted knowing she deliberately gave a false alibi as her first glimpse in this case. And so that must be the context of every single thing she says. She says that they didn't actually kick him out of the house. Well, we have an abundance of social media evidence of texts which show that he wouldn't follow their rules, that he was lying about them regarding times they tried to enforce rules, and so they told him to get out of the house. And then he went to his grandparents and would not follow his grandparents' rules, and so then lied to all the people in the community who then harbored him, telling him that he was unwelcome at any place. In fact, he just refused to follow the rules at every place that was welcoming him and wanted to be in places where no one would provide those kind of rules and supervision. Why? Well, possibly because he had a murder to commit. But even if that's not the case, if he's just wayward in many of those moments, this is a false narrative. And the family, to the extent that they have said, he's innocent and all that, it needs to be said today in front of this large crowd. There are texts from a sibling of the defendant to teachers in real time. There's no reason that sibling would lie. And she is describing the family situation where her brother has told her parents this horrible crime. And they are scrambling and saying, we need to have him see everybody once before he turns himself in. So this narrative from family members saying, oh, we don't know if he did this or he's innocent, it is one of his own siblings texting teachers that shows how much of a false narrative that is. There is a narrative out there by the mother that, he just had a gun, Judge, because family members were in danger because of something that happened in Racine. Well, not only is there none of that in the social media, but here's what her texts say in real time. She is warning the Juga family, hey, I'm hearing rumors my son has a gun. Watch out. Call the cops if this happens. So she is, rather than justifying in any way in those days, she is thinking that the Jugas are in peril at that time and is doing the thing I would consider the appropriate thing then by warning them. And then there are texts between her and her older son that say, hey, if you see your brother, get down on the floor because I'm concerned he's going to shoot up the house. And these are not joking. These are texts sharing with family members about how unsafe they feel. So this new narrative, I just have a gun to keep myself protected, is hogwash that is absolutely counter-indicated by every bit of social media that we have that is in real time. And it's a new narrative designed to create sympathy for this predatory act and predatory individual. Judge, there is no remorse in this case. It's stunning that there is no remorse in this case. And it's too late. So some crying speech today or some recitation from a defense attorney, oh, with us he's really remorseful, it's too late. It's too late. There's ways you could have acted before now that don't show that it's just another manipulation by you today. Think of how rare it is that someone can murder another person. And then think about the character you have to be able to murder someone you know. And then take that here. Say, who out there on the planet has it in them at any age that they can murder someone who has cared about and loved them by looking them in the face and doing that? Who can try to kill someone who has had you over for multiple holiday dinners, who's welcomed you in their home, who's bought you gifts where they were thinking of you? Who can do that? Who is it on the planet who has that capacity in their character? And are those the individuals that we as a community and that the Jugas on a personal level should be protected from? So this is my final thing to the court. I ask the court in your long years on the bench to think about if you've ever had a case where these three factors were higher up when they're added together. 1, have you ever seen a case with this much premeditation? 2, have you ever seen a case where more individual people were skillfully manipulated to help you commit a murder? And 3, have you ever seen a case, Judge, where there was more of a profound effort to corrupt the justice system at its core at a jury trial? And I'd suggest if you take those 3 things together, that this court has never seen a case where those 3 factors are elevated at the height they are in combination. And from the state's perspective, that's where there's the matter in terms of danger to this community. And I ask the court to place this defendant on a sentence where he will never be returned to this community. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. Your Honor, it's no surprise that we are asking the court to make Mr. Fuller eligible for release at some point in the future. There's no doubt that this case is an absolute tragedy, and the court has received a number of letters from the Juga family, from supporters of theirs, describing the level of loss that they feel, the level of pain, physical and emotional. And so I'm not going to pretend to understand what that is. I can appreciate that life would never be the same going through this situation. If this had happened to one of my children, I would be an absolute mess. I would be a disaster. I would be filled with rage. I would be filled with anger. I would be overcome with sadness. I have no doubt that that would be the case. But that's why if that had happened to me or someone that I love and that I was close with, the decision about what the punishment should be would not be mine to make. it falls to a judge. To listen to all sides of this case, to act impartially, to take the emotion out of the situation, decide what is fair, and decide what is just. And that's part of the heavy load that is given to judges, to use their judgment, to not be scared of criticism, to not be scared of the public, to not be swayed by those things. At the trial, in my closing argument, I said to the jury that part of what their job was to not be swayed by sympathy, prejudice, or passion. I understand this is not the trial and you are not the jury, but I think that sentiment continues to hold true. Mr. Gravely talked about remorse. A number of the letters talk about, from the Juga family and their friends and supporters, talk about the lack of remorse that Martice exhibited. And I think Mr. Gravely is accurate in saying that it would be hollow if he did, and I think that's true. I don't think that even if that had occurred, even if there had not been a trial, I don't think it would have made anyone feel any better. I don't think anyone would have believed Martice. They have every right to be mad at him. They have every right to hate him. And I think the reality is that there's nothing that he can do to change that and to change that opinion. I think that all too often we ask way too much of the criminal justice system. We ask the criminal justice system to provide a fair trial, to provide due process, to honor a defendant's constitutional rights, to figure out the correct punishment. And we also use it to try and find healing for victims of crimes or the community. And that's really not what it was designed to do. And I think it's asking too much of the criminal justice system to provide that healing and that closure, because that's not what its original design was. In May of 2019, Martice Fuller was 15 years old. He had no juvenile court history. He was an honor roll student. He was a varsity athlete with lots of potential. He was working part-time jobs. He was a talented young man with a bright future before him. And the courts received a number of letters from his family and his friends describing that person and that child. And I understand that what's been presented to the court in the trial is a completely different message. But I don't think that discounts what his family and friends have said about him, about who that person was and who that person is and continues to be. I wanted to respond to a couple of things that the state had mentioned. One was a letter that was sent from the jail to the Juga house. And I just want to note that that matter has not been litigated in a court. There's not been an opportunity to challenge that, I guess, in the formal setting or in the correct setting. And Mr. Gravely made a number of comments about how the Fuller family has some of the things that have been said now at this point. And there's certainly, this case is not about what they did or did not do. I cannot think that there's a way to accurately predict how any of us would react in a crisis situation such as what they faced. And I don't think whether they believe the state's evidence about what happened or didn't happen, I don't think that's the issue today. The issue is, what's the correct sentence? What's the appropriate punishment? I know the court is well aware of what its obligations are, what the Galleon factors are. And part of sentencing is to figure out what's the appropriate sentence. I know in most cases the court has to first consider probation. We're not in that situation, I understand that. But I think that what the inference is from the case law is to say that the court is to impose the sentence that is the least restrictive needed to accomplish its goals. And here we believe that that means release at some time in the future. The legislature could have decided that anytime someone is convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, that they can never be released from prison. That's not what they did. They said that a judge can decide that at some point in the future that someone is eligible to petition for that release, that it's possible to do that. And here we have a child. We have someone who is 15 years old in May of 2019, who less than a week ago turned 18. And as is mentioned in the sentencing memorandum, the United States Supreme Court has talked about the differences between adults and children when it comes to sentencing, and that even when juveniles commit terrible crimes, they should not receive the harshest sentences, such as the state's proposing. That children are different. Their character is not as well formed. Their traits are less fixed. And quote, from a moral standpoint, it would be misguided to equate the failings of a minor with those of an adult, for a greater possibility exists that a minor's character deficiencies will be reformed. And so, Your Honor, we're asking you to make Martice eligible for release in 25 to 30 years. He is a child, and I do think, and the Supreme Court has recognized, that there is a greater possibility, greater potential for reform. To give some type of reason to be better, to do better, for hope, and the state was right, I'm going to mention hope. To give someone who is 18 years old some ability to think that one day they may be able to walk in the world, to do something, a small thing, to make up for the tremendous pain and sorrow that they have left behind them, and to allow them that opportunity. And so that is our request and our recommendation of the court, is to make Martice Fuller eligible for release in 25 to 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Fuller, anything you'd like to add?
Judge, Mr. Fuller's prepared a statement that he asked that I read on his behalf.
Okay. As you know, court reporter, read slowly, okay?
Yes. Martice writes, wholeheartedly, I wanted to write this giving my sincerest apologies to this family I once shared time and love with. Truthfully, I am sorry about the pain you've all suffered through but more importantly, the loss of my ex-girlfriend, Kaylee, that I loved too. So I am sorry. Despite the hatred that is against me, I still am sorry. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am. And I know that I've barely showed emotion throughout my time, but in all honesty, it is because it's hard to have tears left to cry knowing my mom lost a son, one of her children too. But I am sorry, and I hope you all can eventually see in your hearts and vision that I am not the person the media has made me out to be. Thank you for the chance to hear me out.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I believe the defendant has been incarcerated for 743 days.
Thank you.
And we ask that restitution be to be determined.
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Today is a final day for me in this tragedy that you, Martice, caused for this family, the family of a young girl that you murdered, a mother and a wife that you attempted to murder, and their family, and a community that watched in horror as the story of your ruthless, depraved, and violent story unfolded. It was unfathomable for all of us to think that a boy 15 years old could plot and plan ruthlessly to kill Kaylee and her mother. There's no final day for them, their loved ones, or for your own family. Your actions killed a young girl, wounded and scarred a mother, damaged 2 brothers and a father, and that damage will not end emotionally, physically, or societally. Their burden is enormous and endless. This was a family that warmly admitted you into their circle of family and friends. They ate with you and included you in family activities. They were good to you. They considered you a friend of their daughter. And when teenagers of all ages choose to date and be with friends with other people, you decided you would not allow Kaylee to make that choice. A choice of adolescent friendship that probably every person in this room has made many times before they marry as an adult. Instead of enjoying that friendship that you had, you decided it would be terminated, like a hitman. We saw the plan, the calculating moves that you made to carry out your hatred and your vengeance, the efforts to cover up your heinous act. We also saw the decency of a community in testifying in this case. We heard of the efforts of the school district to put an end to your controlling and compulsive efforts to wall off this young girl from others. You would have none of it. I saw you assert your constitutional rights in a trial that you had every right to do. But I watched as Mrs. Juga, the woman you attempted to kill, testified bravely while you showed not one semblance of compassion or remorse. You sat emotionless until the verdict was returned. You seemed to have no ethos, no regret, no sorrow, no empathy. You are for you and no one else. Much time has passed, and now you're 18. And what have you done since then? You attempted to tamper with my jury. You gathered other inmates to brutalize other inmates. I don't have any knowledge about this other letter, but certainly that isn't a star. You have not shown any attempts to acknowledge your wrong or express remorse in your actions. You are a very dangerous and a damaged human being. You have the soul that God gave each one of us, but it seems it is not bent toward compassion, kindness, or remorse. I'll pray that it be repaired in some manner, but I don't hold the solution for it. These crimes were not the impulsive acts of an undeveloped child. These acts were performed deliberately and with much thought and planning. You do not stand before this court with a damaged childhood. You don't have a history of mental illness. You're intelligent, you are socially developed, you are athletically gifted, you have no prior record. People believed in you and your talents and your future. Your parents worked on your behalf to raise you well. You rejected them. You rejected the coaches who could have helped you. You rejected the school's directions. You rejected the rules of society. And you rejected the rule of law in the processing of this case. The taking of a human life is the most serious of crimes, which is why the legislature has said it statutorily as they have. The attempting of taking the life of Mrs. Juga was a continued part of your plan to cover your murder of Kaylee, and luckily for her, you ran out of ammunition. I don't have any ability to trust that you will never commit these acts again. You continued violent behavior in the jail. The court has no trust whatsoever that what brought you to this murder and attempted murder is repaired or repairable ever. Rehabilitation is not likely in my mind. I hope that you can right yourself in your life, in your daily life, but it won't be among the community. It was all too calculated. So in the interest of protecting the public, acknowledging the seriousness of these acts, the court orders that on count 1, you are sentenced to life in prison without eligibility for extended supervision. You are, on count 2, the court is ordering 15 years in prison, followed by 6 years of extended supervision, consecutive to count 1. And on count 3, the court orders 5 years of initial confinement and 3 years of extended supervision. Count 2 and 3 are concurrent with each other, consecutive to count 1. You are convicted of a felony. The law prohibits you from ever owning or possessing a firearm. If you are found to own or possess a firearm, you would be charged with a felony offense, which carries 10 years in prison and a fine up to $25,000 or both. You're required to submit your DNA sample if that has not already been accomplished. You're not eligible for most of the programming because of the nature of these offenses. And I'd ask that Mr. Johnson and Ms. Scheidegger please accompany him to the go over post-conviction in the other room. Credit for 742 days, and restitution is held open.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Now, everybody's going to sit tight till we get an orderly way to vacate the courtroom. Heidi? I don't have that consecutive and concurrent marked very well, but you could probably do it.